Marcus and Terry here with you today. Hopefully you can hear us okay. And if my eye is acting funny today, I woke up with weird eye pain, which is not fun. But I don't think it's anything major. I think I just like slept with a dog hair or something like that. So hopefully our stream is going. Is it picking up here? There we go.
Yeah,
Cool. So
it
we
goes.
are live,
Head's
ready.
cut off, so I'm gonna raise my camera a little.
Cool.
Oh, there we go. It's all good.
All right, so hello and welcome. Today, what we're going to do is just kind of like a 4th of July sobriety hangout, where we're just going to answer your questions, talk to you guys a bit about staying sober, kind of touch a little bit on staying sober throughout holidays, because I know this is a huge drinking holiday. I remember, I think it was about 20 years ago, my brother was 18, and he went to a 4th of July party, and he came home with a DUI after spending the night in jail. He wasn't 21 at the time, so it kind of ruined a lot of stuff for him, but not fun. So, if you guys have questions about sobriety, this is your time. If I can get my chair to stay straight, that would also help. And we'll kind of go through it. Terry, are there any little tips and tidbits you have for staying sober on like 4th of July or other holidays where the Americans like to consume the booze?
Oh yeah, I hang out with sober people on these holidays, and that's exactly what I'm doing today. And the what I'm doing is I'm a chef professionally, so I'm cooking for 100 sober alcoholics. Probably, actually, 4th of July is usually a pretty popular one, so probably more like 150. And that's what I'm going to do all day. I'm going to at 9 o'clock Pacific time. Here, I'm going to step out and I'm going to go deliver all the food. We'll get the barbecues going, and it's a good thing to do. And people I relate with, and people that all have those 4th of July stories, just like your brother. I have some that are similar as well, and just it's 4th of July is definitely can be a drinking holiday, but at the same time, you'd be amazed how many people don't drink on 4th of July.
Yeah, or don't drink like majorly crazy.
Right.
And that's the thing is really like, pick your people you hang out with, because your circle of friends, your group, is going to determine a lot of what you have. I know in business they always say that, you could usually take a businessman and however much his most 5 closest people make, that's usually what he makes. And I don't know how accurate it is, but they say it is. And, whatever everyone says, it's always true. But they say that. And I think the same thing is kind of similar with alcohol, where it's like, if you're going to be around a lot of people, especially in early sobriety, where you're hanging out with people who glorify drinking, who love drinking, chances are you're going to think a lot more about drinking in a positive, I wish I had that light. Because I even notice it. Like if I'm out somewhere, maybe I'm at the beach. We were at the beach the other day, and it was, 107 heat index, which in Florida is like, I mean, your skin's pretty much like melting. But the water was nice. It was pretty cool, except for the sharks. We went to the beach where, like, if you see the on the news where they do the drone and there's like sharks around people, that's the beach we were at. But they're little sharks, not the sharks you get in California. Most people survive their attacks with like little lacerations or whatever. But I was there, and it's like, okay, it's really hot. A drink in the cooler would sound good, but I'm like, you know what? Who cares? Like, a water in the cooler is going to be just as good. And we got to really look at that and say, what is gonna cause us to step out or relapse, or what is it that's gonna cause us to stay strong. And we really got to look at that stuff because it's extremely important. Let me see if I can get this camera to fix there. There we go. It's really important to look at. And, if you're a month sober and you go to a 4th of July party, it's probably going to be pretty difficult. And we got to take that into consideration. Like, hey, you know what? You just got sober. There's alcohol everywhere. You might want to watch for that and really, really focus on it. Like Christine says, thanks, Marcus and Terry, for having the live stream. It can be a challenging time. And that's true. I mean, it's like, you think about these holidays and you think about, again, the cultural conditioning. And we are conditioned because people like to sell beer and alcohol, right? It's like You take a bottle of water, it's $2. You take a bottle of nice fancy vodka, it's like $100. So obviously there's a lot more margin in it. They got a lot more money to spend on commercials, which means they're going to indoctrinate you for 200 years. American flag, football, hot dog and a beer, and that's what gets in our brain, and that's what we think about, and we got to really face up to that and say, you know what, this isn't really my craving. Like, this is society's craving. I just happen to be part of society, so I'm having it. Right? It's not like a craving that's unique to you. It's not something that is taken away from you. It's something that everyone has indoctrinated, and unfortunately there's a lot of alcoholics still out there that either don't know they need help, or just don't know that help is out there, or don't see a better way out. And that conditioning will get to us. I remember, for a long time it was like, oh, you go to a wedding, you got to drink. That's what people do. I mean, how are you going to dance like an idiot without being self-conscious if you don't drink? And now I'm like, well, I kind of learned that everyone dances like an idiot, especially that uncle, right? You go to the wedding, there's always that uncle who's like, I got this. And he goes on the dance floor and it's like, no, you don't got this. And at the end of the night, his pants are ripped and he looks like an idiot, right? Everyone looks like an idiot on the dance floor. And you got to look at that and say, hey, you know what? All these things that I'm facing without drinking, they're the same things. And I can actually face them better without drinking. Think about how good you could drive home tonight without drinking, think about how much more alert you can be for your family. Think about how much more you could be there for people. And I think one of the other things we should talk on before we get into the questions, and if you guys have questions, this is a Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in, and we're here to try to help as much as possible. We're not doctors or experts, but we have stayed sober, and it was difficult, and we went through a lot to get where we're at, and we just want to share that with you. But one of the things is isolation. Maybe because you can't drink or aren't drinking anymore or don't want to drink or trying to stay sober, maybe you find yourself alone on a holiday because you're like, I really can't go to the rager because it's a rager. And you find yourself alone with your thoughts. And maybe you're thinking, well, I'm alone, I'm kind of depressed. That's one of the things you got to watch for is being lonely, and it wears your defenses down. And you got to look at that and say, well, what if I could just spend today and just be okay by myself? Everything's okay. It's a nice day out or whatever, and kind of go that route. Any thoughts on that, Terry?
Yeah, I'm going to do my barbecue thing all day today. And tonight, I'll probably just hang out at home. Love to go see the fireworks, but, it's a lot of work to go see the fireworks, and people are going to be drinking everywhere, and maybe it's just a better thing just to hang out at home. It's not like I'm really purposely trying to stay away from the alcohol for the people drinking, just, to fight it, but it's just an easier thing for me to do, and I enjoy being at home with my wife and my dog and cat, and just hang out, and it's good enough for me. Brittany had said this is just another way for people to justify drinking, and for me, that was very true for 4th of July or any of the holidays. Another reason for me to justify drinking. But you know what? For most people, it's not so much a way to justify drinking. For most people, they just want to have a beer or two and enjoy themselves, and it's just part of most people could drink without impunity, or drink with impunity and not have issues that happen. But for me, I've got to pay attention to that and make sure that that's not what I'm doing. I'm not going to a party to see other people drinking and having fun and wish I was doing the same thing. And that's kind of why I just stay home.
And, one of the things that's helped me quite a bit, too, when I get a craving or I feel like, I'm missing out, is like I've had more alcohol than probably the average 50 American adults. Like, I'm not missing anything. When it's like, one glass of wine would be nice, it's like I've had cases of wine in a week. I used to have a keg machine in my office. I think I've had enough. I don't need to see what it tastes like again. I mean, I've had gallons of the stuff. And repeatedly, we have proven to ourselves over and over that it doesn't work for us. Like, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. but it doesn't work for us. Like, that's not going to work. When I'm lonely or I'm tired or I'm sitting and I'm like, oh man, I wish I was at the fireworks with Tom or Sally or whoever it is, right? It's like, you're going to be okay. You're not missing out on anything. You've had plenty. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for us. And realize that when I'm lonely, alcohol isn't like an imaginary friend that sits there with us, right? It just takes the thoughts away and makes us feel like shit. And usually, alcohol enhances what you're trying to get rid of. You just don't notice it because you're drunk. Right. So, like, for me, I was like, I'm a little sad about my family situation. I know this ain't nothing a fifth won't solve. I'd drink the fifth and I'd be a blubbering idiot. I just, I'd wake up in the morning and people would have to tell me I was a blubbering idiot, and I'd remember parts of it and be like, oh yeah, that sucked. So it's not really helping. All right, let's take a look at some of these comments here. Christine says, my problem is that I really do not like being around people. It makes me uncomfortable. I enjoy hanging out with my dog, walking, and watching my favorite movies. And that's cool, and I think the key is to find happiness where you're at, no matter what. That's not to say completely isolate and go live in a cave. That's probably not a good idea. I know, like, my wife's kind of like that. She doesn't like hanging out with other people. She doesn't like talking to other people. But when she's around them, she kind of comes alive and she's happier, I notice. So even though we don't like it, it might be a necessary part of life. It might be something that we do need. And I don't know what your life's like. My wife stays home, so it's a little bit more difficult. If you have a job or something, you probably do get that interaction. But we do have to watch for that and be like, okay, is this okay? And, other than that, dogs are great companions. Like, they're awesome. And I've had dogs that drank with me, and the same dog didn't drink with me. She's like, that's cool. We just don't drink now. She didn't give a rip. And now I have a dog that's like a nutcase. You can't go in the pool without her, like, diving on you. She's like, I have to be in that spot in the pool where you're at. And it's like swimming with Freddy Krueger. That's what it's like. Because she's got those nails.
And she has to save you, of course.
She does have to save you. Yeah, she's like biting, and she goes under a little bit too, which is funny. But we got her hair cut because she used to get out, and a golden retriever would take half the pool water out with her. Now she only takes a quarter of it, so we're good. But yeah, just be cool with that and be okay with that, and try to step away from self-pity of being alone. Because I know for me, when I get in alone, I kind of get that self-pity of like, oh, no one wants to be around me. And it's like, no, dumbass, you're just isolating. And I'm speaking that to me, not you. I'm talking to myself here. Where it's like, hey, people do want to be around you. You just got to go out there. Let's see. Megan, this will be my first sober 4th of July in the past 10 years since I was pregnant. It's a major drinking holiday. Where'd we go? Major drinking holiday was pretty much an excuse to get blackout drunk. Yeah, It was a good excuse, But for us alcoholics, we learned that everything's a good excuse.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Not just celebratory, not just the negative, but everything. Absolutely.
All right, you want to take some of these? My eye is...
Sure. Is that Kawasi? So glad I learned how to interact with people who drink, because I will be around a whole lot of people who drink today. Thank God for all of willpower. And right on, that's good that you learned how to interact with people that drink. Just be careful. I always have an escape plan. Like, for instance, I drive myself so I can leave if I see the people are getting too hammered. Or I also, another good thing to do is bring somebody else who's not drinking or that's a sober alcoholic, or have a phone number of somebody that's that you can call if things are starting to get crazy or something like that, and they'll probably tell you to just leave. But yeah, it's good to go into situations like that with the game plan. Figure out what you're going to do if alcohol is becoming a problem, because sometimes willpower is not enough for people. It's been the case with me sometimes, and I've just had to get out of there.
Yep. And also be prepared for what you're going to drink instead.
Yep.
Because it's really easy to just walk up to the bar and be like, yeah, give me the usual or whatever. But if you know specifically what you're going to have, And you can even like Google fancy names of non-alcoholic drinks, and if you want to sound fancy, you could be like, give me a whatever. And usually people won't ask. Like I didn't know until like a year ago that an Arnold Palmer didn't have alcohol. I thought that was an alcoholic drink. So most people, if you order something like that, they'll be like, he's having one of these. And it's like, I think it doesn't have alcohol, right? It's
That's
just tea
correct.
and lemonade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Coca-Cola. But another thing I do that's along that same line is I'll bring a little cooler full of whatever the soda water that I'm going to drink, if just in case there's nothing there, that just because a lot of times you go to a party and there's beer, wine, water, and
Terrible
maybe I don't want a
hosts.
glass of water,
Yeah.
so maybe a soda water or something, an Italian soda, something like that.
Yeah, you could even bring a case of like something that looks fancy, because I
Yeah,
know half the battle is holding something that makes you feel a certain way.
yeah,
Just having it, and it's like I think it was on Back to the Future. The guy's like in the bar and he doesn't drink. It's Doc, and they're like, "Hey, he's been here since 4 in the morning. Is he drunk?" They're like, "Nah, he doesn't drink them. He just likes to hold them." And he just liked to hold it, but then he did drink a little bit. But at any rate, great movie.
yeah.
But we got to really focus on that.
And
All
a
right.
lot of times I'll bring something like a soda water, a LaCroix, or something like that, and I bring it a lot because
Mhm.
people end up drinking them all.
Yeah.
They don't want the alcohol either, even though they don't have a problem.
Yep. All right. Let's see a couple others here. Christina says she's talking to Megan. After working hard all work, I look so forward to my downtime. I'm happy and at peace. That's awesome.
Right on.
Christine says no fifths on the fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah. No fifths ever. Fifths are not good. Let's
No
see.
fifths on the fourth. Let's see, how's that go? No fifths on the fourth, otherwise you may not go fourth to the fifth. How's that?
Dad, that's pretty fancy. You're dropping lines, man. We gotta get you your new rap album out. um, let's see. Cassie, hi guys. Still logged into phones with my day job, but listening when I can. Trying again. Day 2 sober. Horribly down on myself right now. Tired of being a professional quitter. Well, remember that quitting is different than staying stopped. Like the stuff that you do to quit is not the same stuff that causes long-term sobriety. Quitting is simply putting it down, deciding not to have it. Long-term sobriety is going to come by what you do. And either you're going to be proactive about what you're doing to stay sober, or sobriety or alcohol is going to be proactive about pursuing you, right? And we got to realize that you're combating thousands of hours and thousands of drinks of your brain saying this equals feel good. This equals feel good. So every time you have something, I remember for me, I hate being sick. I'm one of those guys, like I have a little eye pain right now, which if Terry had it, he probably wouldn't even notice it. But I have it, and I'm like, the world's ending. We're gonna take it out. Got to pick out an eye patch, and it's just how I am. I don't deal with pain. I don't deal with stuff like that. And when I would get a cold, I got my first cold sober, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I used to drink through colds. I get drunk, and then I'd be like, I'm not sick. I'm drunk, And so we got to remember that it's gonna pursue us, and we got to plan what we're gonna do instead.
Yep.
What am I going to do when I'm sad? What am I going to do when I'm lonely? What am I going to do when I feel bad for myself? What am I going to do when I'm stressed out? And I found out like last week was a rough week. We got one of our major accounts hacked, which could have been multiple six-figure loss in one of my businesses, which would have hurt pretty good. We had a lot of other stuff happening too. And on top of it, like sales were just in the toilet that week. And one of my things that I've always had a struggle with is like the money aspect of my life, where I always like judged my self-worth based on how it worked. And so it was stressful. And I was actually surprised. I was like, why do I not want to drink? What the hell's the matter with me? I used to like, if I had a computer issue or a software issue or an issue in my business, I literally pretended my suitcase was a case of beer. I could be like going to work with my suitcase, and then I'd drink my ass off to deal with those things. And I was wondering why. And it's funny because you look at it and it's like, well, I know exactly why I didn't feel like drinking. Because for the last 5 years, I've been proactive about what I'm going to do when I feel this way. And I've filled my head with thoughts because right now, you got the thoughts of, I feel bad, go drink. I get this, go drink. I feel happy, go drink. 4th of July, shit, everyone's drinking. I better go drink. And you've put those in your head. So now you got to combat those. So it's not that you're, a professional quitter or a failure or you should be down on yourself. It's that you should look at things objectively for what they are. It's like the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we look at it and it's like, what can I really not change right now? Well, there's certain things you can't change, but I can change what my thought life is like. And the way to change it isn't by circular thinking. You're going to get in a cycle and you're going to think and you're going to think and you're going to be closed. The way to do it is to get outside thoughts from somewhere else. Sober people. Philosophy. Philosophy literally changed my life 5 years ago. Without philosophy, I probably wouldn't be sober today. And whatever it is for you, maybe it's, a lot of people take up religion. Some people do AA meetings. Some people do this or that. And we got to look at what's going to work for us. And the reason it works is because the thoughts are outside. If Terry and I sat there after we got sober and we tried to rely on the same thinking, then that same thinking said drinking equals solution to everything. And we'd sit there and we'd say, well, I'm going to get sober because drinking's not working that good. And we'd try to get sober with the thought in the back of our head that says drinking is the solution. I can't have my solution. This is fucked. And instead we were like, that guy says there's better solutions. That guy says I've been lying to myself. That guy over there says this or she said that. And we look at it and we're like, we need thoughts outside of what we're currently thinking. So what I would do for Cassie is challenge yourself to find that thinking outside of what you currently have. And not just embrace thoughts and everything, because thoughts are good. Thinking is good. They always talk about thoughts, but it really comes down to what you do. And you look at the self-help industry, and it's like, if the self-help industry was good and that was enough, everyone on planet Earth would be filthy rich, because that's what they preach. But it's not enough. Thoughts aren't just enough. You got to get the action, because I can think about sobriety all the time as I walk into a bar and get loaded. And it's like, that doesn't really work. I need something to say, this is a good thought, but now I need something that's going to stop me from getting loaded. And sometimes in the beginning, it could be something simple, like get a Talk Sober shirt and wear it into the bar, and they'll be like, what's that? Oh, shit, that means I can't drink, and you'll probably walk out. Or I even thought about when I was early sobriety, I would take little sobriety cards and I put them over my license, because sometimes I would still get carded, and I'd be like, oh, I got this here. I never did have to use it, but it was just that little thought of, hey, I'm not drinking anymore.
It's a little piece of self-accountability. That's great.
Exactly. Or when I first got sober, I'd go to the restaurants, because I go to lunch every day just to get out of the house, because I work from home. And the places all knew me, and they know what I like to drink, and they would bring it before I even met them for the day, they'd just bring it out. And she came around the first time I went to the restaurant with my drink, and I was like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm sober now. I don't drink anymore. And she's like, oh, good for you. What do you want? And I'm like, a soda. And she never brought it to me again, which was good. And, if I asked again, she'd probably be like, oh, did you go back and relapse? Or, she probably would have asked, which is kind of like a sobriety thing. Brittany says, I'm so thankful my family is here for the holiday, especially after the accident. For those that don't know, Brittany was in a pretty good, it looked like a pretty good car accident. Whenever I see airbags gone off, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good one.
Scary stuff.
And she's staying sober, which is good. And it was a sober accident.
Yeah. Back to Cassie's comment right there, what Marcus was talking about was really, we heard it a lot in rehab, and we haven't said it much on our webinars lately, but the only thing you have to change is everything. And when I first heard that, I'm like, what do you mean everything? I have to do all these different things? And and I have to change everything about my life. But really, what he's talking about is changing the thought process. So rather than reacting to everything throughout the day, which the reaction for me would have been taking a drink, it's being proactive, like he's talking about, and having a plan for sobriety that day. My plan for sobriety today, I'm going to go cook for a whole bunch of people that are sober.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's what allows me to do it, especially in early sobriety. It was important for me to have this plan every day and to really be proactive about the stuff I was going to do so that I can develop these habits that just became part of me. And that was the everything I had to change was my mind set, just starting to think towards sobriety. It
Yeah.
wasn't a ton of work, but it was constant work as far as, well, consistent work, not constant, but it was consistent, just staying active in sobriety daily as going throughout the day, just trying to think of the better sober thing to do
Yeah.
rather than get myself in those dangerous situations. And as sobriety increased, that's what helped me was getting those habits, and it's just kind of part of me now. I hang out with sober people. It's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's it's made life a lot easier, definitely.
Yeah, and the plan is really important too because, plan your day or your day's going to plan you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, like, if you guys knew how crazy this sounded coming from me, I'm like one of those guys who gets a planner and I'm like, I'm going to plan my life. And I write down day one and I never do the shit on day one. And then I have a $30 paperweight. And it's like, okay. But plan what you're going to do. I know today I'm going to barbecue some stuff. We're going to hang out in the pool. And then when my oldest daughter gets off work, we're going to watch Stranger Things. That's what we're going to do. And that's a good 4th of July. That's cool. So we got to look at that and focus. Veronica says, I have to make a meeting today, maybe 2. I really need to get the courage to get my hand up. I have 155 days today, and I'm feeling 50 different emotions right now. Not good. Well, a couple things I would look at that. If you need to make a meeting, go to a meeting.
Yep.
If you feel like you need to put your hand up, put your hand up. If you don't. I mean, either way is fine as long as you're staying sober. That's the goal. And if you can get that goal by making it harder to drink, maybe don't carry cash around. That helped me because it was like, if I put it on my card, they're going to be like, what'd you buy for $30 at the grocery store or the liquor store? So that kind of stuff. But I would really look at those 50 emotions are not as dangerous as one drink. Like, you can live with the emotions. Emotions are just emotions. They're not going to hurt you. In our society, not only have we been conditioned to drink, but we've also been conditioned to feel things and to not feel things, right? And it's like sad, drink, happy, drink, depressed, drink. And I've learned throughout sobriety, as they say in Zen Buddhism quotes, when happy, be happy. When sad, be happy. Or be sad. When depressed, be depressed. Be what you are right now and just be there. We don't need to fight it. We don't need to fight emotions anymore. We don't have to take the little discomfort. It's like me with my eye. I get a little discomfort, my whole day is shot, right? If we get a little sadness, our whole day is shot. Oh, I'm sad. Why am I sad? And we try to psychoanalyze instead of just being like, I'm a little sad right now. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe I missed someone. Maybe I'm just down. Or maybe I'm describing the emotions in a different way. And we got to look at it because there's a difference between emotions and description of emotions, right? I'm sad. Okay. That emotion, then you label it. I'm sad. And then you say, about what? I'm sad because my boyfriend left, my girlfriend left, my dad's a jerk, whatever it is, right? And then you start to go down the trail of proving why you're sad. And all of a sudden, you're totally depressed because you were trying to figure out why you were sad. And it would have been just easier just to sit with the emotion of sad and just be like, hey, some days are sad, some days are happy. I wouldn't know the happy days if I didn't know the sad days. I wouldn't know love if I didn't know the opposite, I wouldn't know these other things if I didn't know the counter of them. And I would say, awesome job on the 155 days.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've learned. You've made it 155 days, and I'm sure you've felt a lot of different things.
And,
And
yeah,
you know, if you are worried about speaking up at a meeting, that's not the goal. The goal is to stay sober. Like if
yep,
you feel like speaking up at a meeting is going to make you anxious and make you worried about drinking or whatever, maybe don't do it. Maybe talk to 3 people after the meeting if you're afraid of public speaking. But I will tell you this: people don't remember things. They don't
right.
remember. In a week, you'll go back and you'll be like, "Oh my God, I said these things to these people. What are they going to think?" They're too preoccupied with what you're thinking of them to think about what you, right?
Absolutely.
It's just human nature.
They're
And
thinking about what they're going to say, what they want
exactly.
to say.
Yep. Yep.
The other thing with meetings is, if you look around and you go to enough of them, you're going to see there's people with decades that never raise their hand. So it's okay. You don't have to. Or you can just raise your hand and say, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm just trying to stay sober today. It's great being here."
Mhm.
Simple as that. Or Veronica, exactly what you just put in on the comment section. You could say that. You're going to have people come up to you after the meeting and try to help you out. They're not going to diss you on what you said. That's not going to happen.
Yep.
But yeah, but like Marcus said, don't worry about if you are too nervous. Just don't raise your hand. You know what I tell people that are afraid of raising their hand is just if you relate to something, go ahead and say something. Just say what's on your mind right away.
And
Just do it, and people aren't going to do. They're not going to. They may judge you inside their head, but they're not going to say anything. It's okay. They're going to forget.
a side note, you did raise your hand. Talking here is pretty much
Yep.
the same. You know, you're just not in person. But it does the same emotions and stuff. Okay. Let's see. I totally lost our place. Do you see where we're at?
Sure. Let's see. I can barely read. My eyes are kind of messed. Okay. Megan says, Cassie Jackson, have you tried going to meetings? And yeah, you have. I've been going this time around, and it has really helped. I never thought it would really help me, but somehow it does. And yeah, it's you're getting out there and you're talking to people with the same problems. That's why I go. And on the next comment, Libby says that Megan and I went to meetings for 3 years. So many meetings, so many locations, did me more harm than good in the end. And sorry to hear that, but they're they're not for everybody, and that's okay as long as you're
And
doing something.
you got to remember, meetings are ran by other alcoholics,
Yep.
and I mean, we've all been alcoholics here. We know what our thought life's like. We know what our mindset's like. When you put 30 of us or 100 of us in a room, that there's going to be some weird things. Like I've had some people that are weird characters. And I found for me the best way to do sobriety is, I'll go to a meeting occasionally, like once a year or so now. In the beginning, I went religiously because that's what they told me to do, and I was like, if they told me to wear my shoes on the opposite feet to stay sober, I would have done that because I needed to stay sober. Um, but find what works for you and understand you, and go there for you, not the other people. If you speak at a meeting, speak for you, not the other people. I get wrapped up in this all the time because I like to think I'm profound, and I'm not. And so I'll go to the meeting and I'll be like, I shall have this expository on this thought. And I'll be like looking around like, did anyone think I was brilliant? And it's like, who the hell cares? We're all here to get sober. Just speak your truth, live your truth, be you. And anyone who has a problem with that, screw it. As long as you're not hurting anyone, doing anything bad, or hurting yourself, I think you're okay. And that's really the key there.
And Libby goes on to explain why she didn't like the meetings because I found so many judgmental people, a lot of negativity, and sponsors who were demanding and made me feel bad about myself. It did take 18 months for a person to even want to sponsor me. First 18 months, I was sober myself, though. That's good. It's great that you
And
stayed
and
sober and that you're still sober. That's awesome.
and if you
Uh,
stayed sober 18 months, think about
yeah,
being the sponsor you wanted to have.
Yeah.
Like
And
sponsor someone else. And if that's what your bag is, I mean, I don't do sponsors. I had one for 3 days and then it just didn't work. But one of the best ways to stay sober that Terry and I have found, which is our secret, don't tell anyone, helping other alcoholics.
yep.
Like this show helps us stay sober because we're like, hey, we're helping other people, and it focuses on the good things. And one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it, right? And you learn far more. You learn a lot when you teach stuff.
Yep. And I was told when I was first in the rooms, when I said, I got a problem, this person's really bugging me. And I was talking to somebody else about it in the meetings. And he said, you must be going to enough meetings if you finally found somebody you don't get along with. And that's what I found. There's judgmental people and negativity everywhere from my experience. But that's part of life. And it's
And
part of the learning on how to deal with life. At least it is for me.
one of the keys I found is you can really look at it in terms of living out of ego or living out of truth. If I live out of ego, that's when I worry about other people's thoughts about me. Now,
Yep.
other people's thoughts about you are a barometer. Like if someone comes up to me, Terry comes up to me and he's like, hey, what do you think of me? And I'm like, hey, well, I think you're kind of, whatever. He can look at that. Let's say I say, kind of a jerk or whatever. And you're not, Terry. You're like one of the nicest guys I know. This is hypothetical. But let's say I say that. Terry can look at that and be like, well, am I kind of? No, I don't think so. Okay, next. And you can look at it as a barometer of where you're at. But so often when we get a bruised ego, we're like, no, I'm not that way. It's like the kid on the schoolyard. A little boy goes on the schoolyard and someone's like, hey, you're a sissy. I am not a sissy. What are you saying? And it's the pride and the ego. And it's like, well, who cares if Tom says you're a sissy? Who gives a rip? You know what you are. And you got to look at that and you got to focus and say, hey, you know what? I know what I am. I know what I'm doing. And I don't need to drink because someone else said this. Or I'm not going to drink because of what other people do. And I'm not even going to drink because of what I do or what I think. So those kind of things.
Yep. There's quite a discussion about the AA meetings. Megan says, Libby, I've noticed that too at some meetings, but I just don't go to that meeting again. There are so many. You can find some with some really cool people. That's my experience too. There's some that I don't go to.
Well, and also, if you're going to do meetings, and I don't go to a lot, so maybe Terry could weigh in on this, go to a meeting to stay sober.
Yeah.
Don't go to make friends. Maybe you'll have some, but remember, they're having trouble too.
Yep.
Don't go to
Sick
meetings to
people.
date people. Do not go to meetings to date people. That's just not a good idea. Don't look at it because I've heard a lot of stories about older guys and younger girls in AAs and meetings and things, and you got to be careful and you got to be vigilant to protect yourself because this is about your sobriety, and you don't want to put yourself in a position just because you're being nice or just because you're doing the meeting thing. Still protect yourself. Still look out for yourself. Realize not everyone's perfect. Realize these people are going through stuff just like you are. And, be picky about what you're going to do. Listen for truth. I'll go there and I'll be like, well, that guy's a total dick over there. And maybe he'll say something that's like, oh, I'm going to use that. That'll help me stay sober. So you got to protect yourself and your sobriety no matter what.
Absolutely. And that needs to be the top priority.
Mm-hmm.
Christine kind of touched on that a little further as far as AA. If I share that I am active in non-AA groups and read recovery related books other than the big book, I get that look. AA is not the only way for me. When I first got sober, I was shopping for one of these alkathons with somebody that had a couple decades of sobriety, and we were talking, and I said, I don't hide the fact that I'm sober or that I attend 12-step and AA meetings. And she's like, oh, you can't do that. You have to maintain anonymity. What if you were to go out? You make AA look bad. And my response was just, this is for my sobriety. And I have to be open because it helps hold me accountable. And if they ask, I don't sit there and advertise AA, but if they ask me, I tell them, yeah, I go to AA meetings. It's what helps me. What helps me learn how to deal with life. And that's the way I am now.
And if you ever want to laugh about that topic of, because there's, no matter what you do in life, there's going to be a cult like following to everything. Like everything. Doesn't mean it's a cult, it just means there's cult like activity where people find something and they get obsessed with it and they're like, this is the only way and there is no other way. And if you ever want to laugh about it, read the comments on the earlier videos I made. Um, some of them were like, yeah, it was kind of interesting. And I would get the people that were like, you can't do this. You can't talk about this. You're not a real AA. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a real AA guy. I said I wasn't in the video. And they're like, well, you can't do this. And I'm like, well, last I checked, a certain group didn't trademark alcoholism, so I think we're good. And what works for you is what works. I've met people who, like, they had a drinking problem, they put the drink down, and they didn't drink for 40 years. That guy might have something that will help in sobriety too. So you got to look at it and get your bits from where you get them. I get a lot from philosophy and spiritual talks. If meetings are your thing, I know a lot of people do. More power to you. That's great. But just remember, there's gonna be weird people no matter where you go. You go to church, there's weird people. You go to AA, there's weird people. You go to the bar, there's a lot of weird people. We know because we were them. But you got to look at that, and you got to really focus. And there's also a lot of good people at the bar. There's also a lot of good people at the church. Also a lot of good people in AA. Just got to watch out for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of what Christine was saying a little further down, a lot of times she goes to the gym 3 days a week instead. She's working on her nutrition. And you were saying you go to the gym 3 days a week instead of meetings. And that's great. I work out lots. I go to meetings too. I do work on my nutrition a little bit, not as much as I should, but I do a lot of different things for it's just to improve my overall health. It's not just for sobriety, but just improve my overall outlook on life and try to stay positive. And AA is just one of the tools. It's not the only tool for me. It's one of them. And it's what's helped me a lot. So whatever works for you guys, whatever you find that's working, stick with it and try other things. Try to stay open-minded. Try to be honest. Be willing to try the things and do the things that it takes. That's what I found that works.
Cassie says, I'm down because of a relationship damage I did while drunk, and also super down on myself for not seeming to be willing to change. This time it's got to happen. I was actually talking to my kids about this yesterday. When you do things in life that you are down on yourself about, you need to remember that anyone in the same situation with the same mindset would do exactly what you did. Everything we do is a form of a cycle or like a hysteria, if that's the right word. But it's a current situation you're caught up in, right? So you were caught up in the situation of alcohol. That ruined your relationship, but that's not really you. That's you acting under the influence. And we got to look at that and say, well, a lot of the things we do are chemical. And when we put chemicals in our body, we're going to do crazy things. So I think self-forgiveness is important. And I think self-love is important. And I think also separating the person from what the alcohol did to the person is two different things as well. Because a lot of times what alcohol does is it puts you to your base root and you live out of ego. You want to live out of ego? Go to the bottle. What it's going to do, this is why there's bar fights, right? Some guy's like, I don't like Trump. Guy's probably me, as you could tell by my shirt. But at any rate, guy's like, I don't like Trump. Another guy's like, I like Bernie. They get in a big fight. And it's like, why are you in a fight? Because our egos are hurt. Not because we're looking to actually have a discussion, but a lot of what it is egos hurt. Or, fighting over a certain beer or a certain girl or whatever it is. It's all about ego. And if we take that ego away and say, you know what, I am more than the sum of my thoughts. I am more than what I've done. I am more than my name. I'm more than what people think I am. There is more here. I am a spiritual being. There's more to life. I don't know what spiritual being means, but I know there's more. And we have to look at that and we have to live from that and say, you know what? It's okay. And luckily, one of the good things about society now is they are wising up to addiction. They're wising up to how it works, and they're wising up to how it affects people. And people were talking about, what was it like in the 30s? In the 30s, back then, when a lot of recovery culture that they use today was written, it was all religion. You needed to get born again to get, stop drinking. And a lot of that carried the connotations. That's cool. I mean, some people, I guess, they do get born again and they stop drinking. And that's cool. For me, I needed this. And we got to look at that and kind of focus and not live out of ego and say, you know what? I may have done some things that I'm not proud of, but it wasn't me acting out of my own brain. It wasn't me acting out of my own stuff. And you got to really look at that.
Yes. I was reading
right.
Sorry for the pause there.
I think there's a little bit of an argument about real or fake alcoholics.
Yep.
Well, an alcoholic is someone who continues to drink despite negative consequences. If that's a housewife who has one glass of wine every day, and when she has that glass of wine, she yells at her husband, that's negative consequence. That would be defined as an alcoholic. A lot of people get tied up in battle stories. Oh, I drank a fifth. I drank a 10th. I drank an 11th. Who fucking cares? If we drank and it fucks up our life, pardon my language, you're an alcoholic. And this comes down to labels. We label everything.
Yes.
And one of my interesting thoughts, and I've thought about doing this, but I'm a little worried about it, is something that they used to do, I think they might still do it, in ancient India culture. In ancient India culture, after a man had his family and his job, he would go put on like a sackcloth or whatever, like a little towel thingy, and he'd run into the forest and he'd be there for a couple of years. And it was interesting because if someone was alone for years, they would actually lose the thought process of words. It's very interesting, right? So we think about this. Our thoughts are limited by our words. The word alcoholic limits a person who struggles with alcohol by the very nature of the word. And guess what? We didn't even make these words up. These aren't even our words. So the thoughts that we have and the things we're thinking and the cravings and the bad thoughts and the good thoughts and the ego thoughts, these are all made up of words that we didn't even come up with. And what we're doing throughout life is we're taking little sticky notes and we're going about our life and we're like, that's sad. And we look at it and we're like, that's sad. Okay, here's what sad is. Whenever I feel this, this means I'm sad. This means I'm depressed. This means I need this. Or that guy's an alcoholic. This means he can't control his liquor. He probably has this. He's probably this. He's probably, and you have all these things that are tied to what it is we're trying to say. And we look at it and it's like, what if we did away with that? What if I was just like, you know what? You're just Terry. I don't know much beyond that. And if you look at it scientifically, I think they say that all of the cells of our body are different every 7 years. So that's not even the same Terry. He looks the same way because cells are really good at rearranging themselves, and he doesn't look like a squid, luckily, right? And so we got to look at that and be like, okay, this is changing all the time, and we got to look at it. Brittany says, I'm the type of alcoholic that cries. I focus on my husband and that he has a girlfriend. I'm so happy that this channel is showing me how to be with my feelings. It is what it is. And look at it as maybe it's opening something up for something new in your life. I'm not the one to say that every closed door is God wanting you to have better stuff. I don't like that kind of thinking because it leaves out the population that's starving. And I can't sit here and say God wants me to have a new car when some guy doesn't even have something to eat. That just doesn't work in my brain. If it works in your brain, that's cool. But for me, I look at it and I'm like, this might be showing you something. This might be a time to learn about yourself. It might be a time to grow. It might be a time to find out that the husband you had isn't the husband you need. Maybe. We got to look at that and say, well, if it's the kind of guy that goes with someone else, then, and really look at happiness of other people. Like, I've learned a new definition of the word love. And the definition of the word love that I have now is love without attachment and love without possession. In America, we look at love as a possession. I get that girl, I put the ring on her finger, that girl is mine. Instead of looking at it as, I love this person, and if they are happier without me, maybe it'll hurt me a little bit, but if I truly love someone, don't I want their ultimate happiness? Right? Does that make sense, or is that like a total tangent? I'm kind of a whack job
You're
in
good.
my head, but
Keep going.
But a lot of times we look at it as possession, and it's like the Buddha said, suffering comes from desire or wanting or possession. And it's like, why do we need to possess things? Why do I need to crave things? You look at the American dream, since it's 4th of July: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, as if it's a pursuit to be had, not something that's already in us. Happiness is already in you. Contentment is already in you. Anything else is society or your mind saying, I must have that. I need to go get that. When I have that car in my driveway, I will feel this. When I have my house, I will feel this. Instead of looking at it and saying, right now where I am, I'm okay. Might not be perfect, but you know what? I can only occupy about 2 square feet of my house at a time anyway.
Yeah.
I can only drive 1 car at a time. I can only, do one thing at a time, watch one TV at a time. There's so much you can do, and we got to look at that, and we got to put it in perspective and say, right now, you're okay. You might miss someone, and that's okay. It's okay to miss someone. You might get heartbroken, and that's okay sometimes. It's okay. It's part of the journey, and we got to look at it and say, well, what am I going to do to take care of myself? And it's like they say on an airplane. If you ever go on an airplane with your kids, they tell you, put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then put it on your kids. And the reason they do this is because they know if you got kids, the plane's going to go, the masks are going to fall. Jimmy's going to be like swinging on one and be like, woohoo, this is the coolest thing. The other one's going to be hitting it, and the other one's going to be running around half naked around the plane. This is what kids do. When there's crisis, they like flip out. And they know by the time you get Jimmy to settle down, and by the time you get the other kid to sit and put his pants back on, and you get their oxygen mask, you're going to be passed out because you have no oxygen. So they say, put yours on first, because without oxygen, you're going to be dead. Same thing with alcohol. If you don't take care of yourself first and say, I'm going to stay sober, nothing else matters.
Yep.
Right? And that's really the key, because without our sobriety, we're going to go back to all the things we regret. We're going to go back to a life we don't want to live. We're going to go back to not knowing how to manage our emotions. We're going to go back to all the hurt, all the pain, and being at a base level, living out of ego. I want this. I got to have this. This guy did that. That guy looked at me wrong. And that's not a way to live, in my opinion. I am thankful every day that alcoholism brought me to that realization. I hate that for whatever reason it had to be alcohol to bring me to that, but I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, probably because I was a stubborn,
that goes back to the labeling: alcoholic, real alcoholic, all that. I don't care. I know I have trouble with alcohol. I know I'm an alcoholic, but the label doesn't matter. What matters is that I have to move. I can't drink anymore, and I have to figure out a way to get through life without drinking, and I want to enjoy life. So I have to do certain things every day to keep myself sober, and that's the important thing. So I have to keep track of my ego. If I let my ego get out of hand, I'm likely to drink. At least that's what people explain to me. That's what I've proven to myself. And so I have to figure out a way to stay sober. Many people did not realize that I had a problem with alcohol. A few people did. It didn't matter. I don't know that I was really labeled an alcoholic by anybody. I had to tell myself that I was an alcoholic. I had to believe it down all the way down to the core. I believed it a little bit, but then I drank again because I really didn't believe it all the way down to the core. And that was huge for me when I finally realized that that's when I was able to quit and stay quit and realize that I have to do stuff every day.
Mm-hmm.
That was important to me. So yeah, the labels, eh, no big deal as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, we have to have labels to get diagnosed by a doctor or something. But when somebody that doesn't see the whole picture are labeling me, I just try to let it go.
Yeah.
Try not to worry about it. And a lot of troubles happen when I'm letting other people get to me, let what other people's opinions are of me and what they're saying about me and what I think that they're thinking about me. I got to let all that go. I just got to worry about doing the right thing, and that's what works for me so far.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. And that's the thing is we do get better. We do get a new outlook on life, and it's going to come from what your life philosophy is. Like you look at it, and it's like up until I got sober, my life philosophy was like make a bunch of money. Uh, why doesn't my wife like me enough? What do I do here? I'm kind of a victim. Government takes too much money. That was my life philosophy. And then when I got sober, I'm like, well, maybe it's different. Maybe I'm looking at everything all wrong. Maybe, maybe it's the government doesn't take too much. Maybe they like to help people who have no things or whatever. Maybe it's me, and I had to look at it and say, well, the sum of all my problems was me.
yep,
I'll sit there and I'll say that guy said this, that guy said that. It's kind of like when I was a kid, we were driving along, and I think it was my stepdad or my brother. My stepdad was weird dude. Uh, you want to learn more about him, watch other videos on my channel. But we were driving along, and he always got excited when he saw a fancy car because he'd get jealous. And he's like, oh, that guy, there's a guy in a big truck. And he's like, that guy thinks he's all badass. He probably has a little,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
And I was like, you think he's all badass. He just drove down the road. You don't even know. You have no idea. You're the one who thinks that. And you got to look at it and say, am I the one who thinks these things? Is it me? Because all of our day we spend talking to ourselves in our head. And for a lot of people here, if you're anything like me when I was drinking, you talk a lot of negative and a lot of, bad things and judgment, right? And there comes a time in life when you have to look at it and be like, everyone's not judging me. I'm judging them, and I'm projecting that on them. Because we do project it, and it is part of us. And we got to look at it and say, and if they are judging me, who cares? Do I care? I can't hear it. They're going to go, half of them I probably don't even know. Who cares? And it's funny because it's like people get all bent out of shape, and I'm actually thinking about, with the exception of our alcohol group, like limiting the amount of social media I go on during the election years because it just gets crazy. And it's funny how butthurt people get about a comment from a guy online they've never met.
yeah,
And especially with me because my views are not the mainstream. And sometimes I like to share them. And, people will get completely butthurt and ruin relationships over a simple little disagreement. And it's like, why? What do I care about a guy who's commenting on Facebook and disagrees with me? Who gives a shit? Who cares if he even says I'm an asshole? Who cares about the guy? I remember years ago when I first started this channel, there was a guy, and his picture was like him and his muscle, and you could tell he was like pushing it up with his other arm. That's beside the point, but I thought that was funny. And he would crap talk about this channel over and over. And I got into it with him for like 3 days. And I was really like getting offended. And I'm like, what do I care about this? I'm here to reach people. And he's like, you'll never be anything. You'll never do anything. You'll never get past 500 views. And I was like, well, that's cool. That's your opinion. Right? And it's like, we did get past it. And why did we get past it? Because of you guys, not because of me. You guys tune in. You guys get, keep it going. And that's what's really cool is it's like, who cares what someone thinks? And the way the human mind works is I don't care if 100 alcoholics showed up at my doorstep tomorrow and wanted a hug with me and said, "You and Terry have helped me get sober," and one guy was like, "I think you are a dick," I would focus all day on the one guy.
Yep.
And it's like other people's lives are being changed, but you'll focus on the one thing. And it's human nature. And once we know that, it's like, it's just my mind doing its thing.
We just accept what we can do.
Exactly. And Brittany says, be the person you want to be someone you're proud of.
Right on.
Absolutely. Terry's got to go cook some food. Did you guys have any other questions? I can stick around for like 5 or 10 minutes longer. If you guys do have questions, type them in. If not, have a happy, sober 4th of July.
Absolutely.
Yep. And don't watch the parade.
Oh, you mean the...
Yeah.
Okay. No, we have a good parade here in my little town. That's
yeah, just
different.
don't watch the
Yeah. Government-funded one.
Yeah, the big one. If you can stay sober without a program, why would you need AA or rehab for support? You wouldn't. And if you can, do it. This is for when you can't. Plenty of people have gotten sober without other groups. I proved to myself that I couldn't do it alone.
Yep.
I needed outside thoughts. I needed to change a mind. And I used that tool, and then I was like, okay, now that I'm sober, I'm going to focus myself on getting sober. There is no one way. This isn't a religion.
Absolutely. There is no one way. My brother's been sober for 30 years, and he is not involved with AA. He does his own thing, and he's happy. He's happily married, has a great life. So there's many different ways.
Yep. And I've been sober 5 years, and I used meetings in the first 90 days. After that, not a whole lot. Do what works for you. Some people like go to church. Some people read books. Whatever it is. Some people just don't drink.
And someone mentioned percentages of recovery. I think it was for AA earlier, and it doesn't matter. It's really what people show. Well, I know a common one, and it's pretty much for all programs of sobriety. It's around 5% success rate. But what does that really include?
And I'll add
does that 5% mean the people that tried it, they didn't stay sober, they tried it, they didn't stay sober, so that would lower the percentage. It could be many different things.
I'll add 2 little notes to that percentage thing. Number 1, I have never been once called or asked about my sobriety. So
Yep.
statistics are most of the time not right. Like when I watch them on the news, they'll be like, oh, most Americans don't like this candidate. And I'm like, well, they never asked me. Why wasn't I included? They asked like 4 people, and they're like, well, these 3 didn't. And they manipulate statistics. You can manipulate statistics to say whatever the hell you want. Second thing I will say about that is an old story. And there was a story about a guy, and he's on the ocean, and he's throwing crabs back in the water. And this guy walks up to him, and he's like, why are you throwing these crabs back in the water? He's like, well, if they're out of the water too long, they're going to die. And he's like, but there's millions. You can't save them all. It's not going to matter. And he throws a crab in, and he goes, mattered to that one. And we got to look at it as, you know what? It matters to you.
Yep.
It mattered to me. It mattered to Terry. And you matter to us. And you got to look at that and focus on it. So don't get hung up on statistics, because this is about you. It's not about 50% of Americans, blah, 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 blah. It's about how many percent of me am I going to have 0% of beer today? 100% is going to have 0%. And that's what we do.
Right on.
All right. With that said, I think we're about out of time. Thanks for joining us on your holiday. Give us lots of comments. Give us lots of thumbs up. If you want to support the channel and get a free Talk Sober t-shirt, go to talksober.com, click the big button. It does cost money to run this, and right now we are at a little bit of a negative, and I'm funding it out of my pocket, which, or we are funding it out of our pockets, rather. And, if you want to help, good. If you can't help, don't worry about it. Just help us with comments and love and vibes and doing what you're doing. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for joining. Happy Sober 4th of July.
Thank you, everybody.